Well, hello, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Welcome back. I am so sorry to announce that this will be our last lesson before this awesome Thanksgiving. So here's a happy, warm, happy Thanksgiving. I am so thankful for you guys. You guys make my day so much better every day. So I am thankful for you. Now, continue on with the happy thankfulness cheer and make sure that you tell your family or whatever you're thankful for happy Thanksgiving and that they mean a lot to you. We are wrapping up some of our brain stuff. We have learned quite a bit the last 12 weeks we've been in school, which has absolutely been amazing. So we have gone through a lot of parts of the brain. Now, today we're still going to be talking about the brain, but we're going to be talking about the easy parts, which is like the lobe parts. So as we get into this, I am going to be sharing my screen. Share. We are. Awesome possum. Okay, so today's theme word of the week is skill. We need skill to be able to use our brain, which I know you guys do. We also need to have skill today on remembering what parts of the brain to the lobes. So today's quote of the week is, do what is right, not what is easy. If we were to take a look at this easy string and arrow, sometimes we might think it is easier to, say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to give my best in it. I'm going to take the easy road and just tap out right now. But the right thing to do is to put in the extra work and extra time and commitment and get the job done right the first time. Because I know my students work 110% all the time, every time. So we need to start differentiating between right and easy. And the way to success is the right way, not the easy way. So moving on. So the areas of the brain. So we have the lobes that we'll talk about today. And we've learned about different parts of the brain. So far we have talked about the brainstem, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, the hypothalamus. I think that's about it. We have learned a lot. So there are 4 main lobes, the yellow, pink, blue, green colored things, but they are also considering the cerebellum and the brainstem lobes as well. But we already know what those are. The cerebellum is your coordination, your muscle, and your balance. And then your brainstem controls your blinking, your breathing, your swallowing, your speaking. Oh my goodness, it controls your heart rate, your blood pressure, all movements. I mean, without that, we would be laying on the floor like a rubber band and we'd be tripping and falling over the place. So those are the 2 lobes we already know of. Now we'll be talking about the 4 main ones. So your first lobe that we need to introduce is called the frontal lobe. And this here is this part of your brain. It's the biggest lobe of your head because it contains the most things in it. Now, your frontal lobe has your prefrontal cortex, your corpus callosum, your left and right hemisphere, and your cerebrum. Your cerebrum, remember, is like another term for your frontal lobe. And it's just that big area right there. This right here in this pink is considered a cerebrum. It's a fancier term than frontal lobe. Frontal lobe, with all those different parts of the brain put together, you get movement, decision-making, thinking, logic, emotions, speech, behavior, planning, and short-term memory. Now remember, short-term memory is day-to-day things that we won't remember from a long-distance time. Short-term memory is like what you ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner today, what you wore today, what fun things you did today. That in a year's time, or even a couple months on the road, you may not quite remember fully. So one test to remember the frontal lobe is baking. Baking, for instance, uses your frontal lobe so much. So if we are going to make a pumpkin pie, because 'tis the season for all pumpkins and pecan pies, pumpkin pie. We can't just, say, oh, abracadabra, a pie falls out of the sky, throw it in the oven, and voila. Not quite that easy. You could just go to the store and buy a pie, but no, we don't do that. We want to make it fresh and homemade and made from the heart because baking is just everything. So when we have the task of making pumpkin pie, we need to go to the store, we need to buy the ingredients, and then when we get home, we need to make sure that we measure out the ingredients properly. We need to put them in the correct steps and order. So speaking of pie, for my older kids, you will become very familiar with this math symbol right here. Some of you guys might know this is called pi, but in the math lingo, I'm not talking about the delicious pie you eat. This is the math symbol. So you will need to know pi 3.14 for the rest of your high school career, junior high career, and even college if you'd like to go. So what we're going to use is your frontal lobe. For this instant, I need you to take a second and look at the screen. Memorize 3.14814 or 3.14841, my bad. 3.14841, not 1.4. Okay. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it goes bye-bye. Okay. So when we are talking about our next lobe, which is located towards the back center of your head, it is the second largest lobe of your head. And this is called a, gotta give Miss Harp a second to think about how we pronounce it. It's a parietal lobe. It is very easily spelled, but the way how one video was explaining me how to say it kind of gets Mrs. Harp's brain a little crazy right now. So when we are talking about the parietal lobe, the process to integrate touch, taste, temperature, sensory. Now, some of us might be thinking, what the heck sensory is? Miss Harp's office is known for sensory. So like I have my wonderful pineapple here. You push it down, sensory. Stuff that makes you relax and calm. It could be things that are soft, smooth, slime, kinetic sand, that kind of thing. That's sensory right there. Information. So, a couple parts of the brain that we already know about. When we are talking about the process of all this kind of stuff, we talk about the cingulate cortex. And this is to regulate pain to touch. So for instance, if I were to fall down right now on the cement and scrape up my knee, that would be my parietal lobe going off and being like, ouch, your skin is cut, it's open, I need to go see Mrs. Rogers. Or let's say I want to go out and ride bikes tomorrow, scraped my elbow. Same thing, your parietal lobe is siren off, help, help. Now last week we learned about the thalamus, and the thalamus is the pain or the sensation of an emotion. So in order to have a memory, we have to have an emotion to happen first. Now, it's two different types of sensations you get. The cingulate cortex, you get physical pain, and your thalamus, you get emotional pain. So that's everything about the parietal lobe. Now, moving on to the fun part about this. So I challenge you guys to go home tonight and pick out some fun things to put inside a mystery box. Since it all does with your sensations and touch, even though it does with sight, but we're going to take sight out. So you put a bunch of random things in the can or in a box, and you feel and see if your family, friends, or your brother and sister can't guess. So that is tonight's fun game. Please do and have fun, because I know you guys like watching YouTube challenges, and I know that's one of them. So yes, have fun with the mystery box challenge. Now, moving on to the next lobe is the temporal lobe. Now, this is your hearing, your understanding of when people are talking to you, your speech, your language, your facial recognitions, and your long-term memory. Not short-term, long-term. So remember when we talked last week about your amygdala and your hippocampus. Amygdala, hippocampus. Remember our hand model? It's your thumb. So in order to have a memory, an emotion must occur. So the amygdala must be alarmed first before the hippocampus can come in and save the memory. And that is where the temporal lobe comes in handy. It helps us listen. It helps us to understand. Now, you guys are understanding my language currently because I speak English. Now, if we are going to do a cultural day, which I think I might do in the springtime, if I were to bring in someone who could speak Spanish very fluently, and they said, hola, hola, ¿qué tal? Hello, good morning. You might be in this, I don't understand that, which is perfectly fine. Or we did facial recognition. Right now you can tell what exactly expression I have on my face. Or you may be able to identify who are your parents or your siblings out of a big crowd of people. Those are all facial recognitions. Now, long-term memory. Here comes the kicker. So here in a moment, I will flip the slide. Let's see how well your short-term memory was. But when we talk about the temporal lobe, we talk about the amygdala and the hippocampus are the two main parts that we have learned about. So, pi, remember the symbol again? Pi. How many of you guys remember numbers that go to that pi? Did you guys guess 3.14841? If you did, awesome, superb, spectacular, you are awesome. So, we just use our temporal lobe, our frontal lobe, and our parental lobe, all just by memorizing pi. Now, I don't expect you to actually memorize pi, but it's just something fun for the holidays. So our last lobe that we are going to learn about, and it's clear back in the brain, but fun fact is it must have the brainstem, the cerebellum to work in order for this last lobe to work. And this last lobe is called the occipital lobe. And occipital may sound like octular, which is kind of like octagon, but not quite. So if we talk about octa, which means sight, you're thinking about eyes. So occipital lobe, which is the sense of sight, your color perception, which when we talked about a couple of lessons before, we talked about color trichromads, where we had green, red, and blue, and how a normal person who can see sees about 10 million different colors of shades, while a colorblind person only sees about 10,000. Another thing is the occipital lobe uses is to assess the distance, be able to tell is that far away, is that close up, the size, the depth perception. The best way to use your occipital lobe is theme parks. Roller coaster rides, how big is a roller coaster ride, how far up, how fast. That uses your occipital lobe very well. But in order for that to work, you have to have your brainstem and your cerebellum. That's why I have them at the bottom of the screen. So, occipital lobe. How many of you guys have seen this thing? A windmill or a little wind turbine. These big things on the side of the highways are called wind turbines, and they spin and spin and spin like this to produce energy. They store it up, and then we can use it all throughout the U.S. or the state of Kansas. But I know that when I was younger, I thought the wind turbines were this big, literally. I thought that if I got up close to them, I could stand right by it and be like, I'm bigger than it. But it wasn't until I got older and I was in high school that I realized these things are very, very big. So take a look. These wind turbines are a whole lot bigger than what we thought. These people are at the top of the wind turbine. They're little ants compared to the wind turbine. That are, in fact, an actual normal size wind turbine that we have here in the state of Kansas. It's 466 feet, which is about 43 stories. Now, we might remember that Philippe Petit, the tightrope walker who walked across the Twin Towers, walked across 110 stories from the Twin Towers. This is almost half, a little under half, but it's still very tall. Depth perception of using something is so important. We need to be able to tell how big it is, how long it is, how tall, how short, how heavy. I mean, a lot of things go into simple things like how heavy is this pin? How big is this pin? So that kind of a thing. So when we use our occipital lobe, we use depth perception, your sight, your memory, everything to try to piece together that puzzle. Now, if we remember right, the left eye goes to the right side of the brain, the right eye goes to the left side of the brain. Same thing. Your eyes connect back into the occipital lobe. Now, fun fact, these wind turbines are half the size of the Eiffel Tower, but it is also taller than the Statue of Liberty, which is only 305 feet, while a normal wind turbine is 466. So, with that being said, wind turbines can be found on land and in water. And the ones in water are a little bit taller than the ones on land, but they're all here to produce great energy for everyone. Wow, we are done with that lesson. That is absolutely crazy. Wow. So you guys are master geniuses. Keep being awesome. Memorize the brain. Become one with the brain. So what we will do the next couple of weeks is, unfortunately, like I said again, I won't get to see you next week. I know, I'm so sorry. But what we will do is when we come back from break, we will read a story. We will start something really fun in the classrooms. And then when we come back, we will learn about the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain, fight, flight, or freeze, and something called about hulking. You guys are very familiar with the Marvel superheroes. But with all that said, happy Thanksgiving. I love each and every one of you, and I am thankful for each and every one of you. So we'll see ya. Have a safe Thanksgiving. Bye.